Okay, what up, what up? I'm going to try to explain sort of, or go through a game between Henry Edward Bird playing white and Paul Morphy playing black. So remember, Morphy's this champion, just really good player, very ahead of his time. But I think he's just regarded as, he just really knew how to play really well, just very good player. There's an opening called Bird's Opening, named after this guy who played f4. Henry Edward Bird. This really weakens this diagonal here, that makes the king vulnerable. It's not a popular opening, but I don't know, it's quite possible. I might try it a bit. I really don't know that many openings. Okay, anyway, let's look at this game. It's from London, 1858. Alright, let's get into it. E4, E5. Right into it. Knight F3, attacking the pawn, and D6. Remember, another option is to bring out the knight. This is called Philidor's defense, but it blocks the bishop. But whatever, we'll see what happens. D4, putting extra pressure on E5. This seems to be a good, strong move. Just in the opening, white's considered to have a slight advantage, a bit like in tennis with the serve. So black sort of needs to do something. He plays F4 though, an interesting move. In chess, if your opponent makes a threat, often you have to respond either to defend it, but you don't want to be passive if possible. You want to try to be active, and this is a counter gambit. It's called the Philidor counter gambit, I think. He's sort of saying, look, you take the pawn, and then because it's defended by the pawn, but then the knight adds an extra attack. It can be, and then the queens could be traded as well. Black's planning to take on E4, so white says, all right, I'm not going to take the pawn. I'll just develop my knight. So black follows through by taking the pawn, and then knight takes. Knights are strong in the middle. They can access, this can access 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 squares, whereas on the side they can only access 4 squares, and in the corner only 2. So it's a good position for the knight, but now black follows through by pushing his pawns and attacking the knight. So the knight sort of has to run away. You don't want to lose a knight for a pawn, and then black plays E4, attacking the other knight. So the knight jumps to the center. This is kind of strong for the knight. It's a good position, and it's backed up by a pawn. In a way, this is a weak point for black now, but if this knight gets traded off by, say, a knight or a bishop, then this pawn ends up here, and it'll be weak. It'll be easy for black to get rid of it, in theory. And this pawn's quite strong. It really cramps white a bit. And this center is just pretty strong. Anyway, but this should be an interesting game. Black develops his knight. White immediately pins it. This is just development, I guess. Brings the bishop to d6. This is good because this knight is kind of annoying. It's a bit dangerous. At any time it could jump somewhere, or if the king's ever in check, this knight's really restricting options. It's like even if the queen came here somehow, then that would be checkmate. So black now has an option to get rid of the knight at any time, just in case. White keeps moving forward, threatening the knight, well, putting more pressure, but really threatening g7. So black just castles. Okay, now I guess even though white's got a few pieces here, they are kind of vulnerable. This knight's only protected by the queen. This knight's only protected by the pawn, and this bishop is hanging. Or at least it's not hanging. Nothing's protecting it though. So if this knight moves, I know it's pinned, but this knight could move somewhere, especially if this knight can threaten a queen. Then that kind of move becomes quite possible, or even if it can come out and do check. It's just important to keep in mind this bishop is not completely safe. It's a little bit dangerous. Anyway, white plays queen to d2, which I guess is kind of good. It protects the bishop now, but this knight is not protected. Now it looks like this knight's hanging, but this knight is still pinned by the bishop. So black plays queen to e8, opens up a diagonal for the queen. I mean, a bit like this one's got a nice, you want pieces to have a good position. This is actually a bit dangerous, having the queen. If black played here and then here, actually that doesn't really work because white can play, never mind. But just something to keep in mind. Sometimes this sort of configuration can be dangerous. Now this knight is attacked, so by the knight and the queen, white decides to defend with g4. I think, I could be wrong, but I think that's just basically a mistake. Because this pawn isn't really safe, even though it's protected by the knight. Black has sort of a simple combination. This is kind of remove the defender. I want to take this knight with my queen, but I can't because of the pawn, so just get rid of the pawn. White takes back, so black has lost a knight, but then now he can take the knight. So black just won a pawn, so he's already ahead by a point. This attacks the knight goes straight back to the center, where it's best placed, and then black immediately puts pressure on it. White can't really maintain it there. He'd have to, I don't know, back it up with the bishop or something, but black can just take it and then take the pawn. Okay, white decides first to attack the queen. One thing to keep in mind is you never want to just attack a piece for no reason, and in this case black can move the queen. He chooses to move it to h3. I don't fully understand this game, but this is threatening. Anytime you can get the queen close to the king seems like a good idea. This is obviously white can't castle this side now, but he's probably going to try to castle this way. But anyway, I'm not sure. White, I think, can play bishop to g4. Maybe black just plays this. I'm not sure. This, I don't. And maybe there. I'm not sure. But anyway, white chose to now trade off his knight because otherwise there's too much pressure. Black takes back. Now the position is getting a bit more interesting. These are called doubled pawns. This pawn is weak because it can't be protected by a pawn, but it's not really weak unless it can be attacked, and white doesn't have much way. You could try to, that's not going to work because the queen will trade off, but he could try to attack it. It's just too easy for black to try and push it or do something, so it's not really weak as double pawns. And now black has an open b file that he can try to use. And white's king is looking a bit trapped. The black's got good squares in the center that he has control of. His queen's aggressively placed, and now there's an open file here. So I don't think white's position is incredibly healthy. White comes back with his bishop, and then black immediately seizes the, I guess it's called the semi-open b file. And if you just look at the pieces, this bishop's pretty good. Overall, although the problem is, you know, if it goes here, 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 can't really go to any of those squares, and this one either because of the other bishop. And here there's not many, it can't really attack. It's because of these, so I guess it's not that good. It's sort of, these pawns really mess it up. And this bishop's quite terrible because it's really, sometimes we call that a tall pawn. It's just, it's acting like a pawn. It's not. It's just basically protecting that pawn, and there's not a lot it can do here. I'm not 100% sure why white played it there. I guess to just to sort of solidify things in the center a bit. Okay, so the b2 pawn is being threatened. Something to keep in mind: the simple moves like rook to b1 sometimes work quite well, or I'm not sure. So white decides to castle. This I think is a bit dangerous, as you'll see. You don't really want to move your king towards where they've got an open file, but maybe that's the best option. What's cool is black now does a very unexpected move. I mean, black this bishop is really good, and this bishop's okay. It has potential. It's not doing a lot at the moment, but at least it's got nice open lines. And this rook's good as well. It's on a semi-open file. But anyway, black plays this very cool move. And by the way, if you're trying to learn, it's always good to pause the video if you want and just constantly think, what would I do in this situation? What are the tactics going on? Now this is basically a sacrifice. Now black has won 2 pawns. White doesn't have to accept it, but I think it's kind of forced. Because black, I guess the main threat, again, I'm not an expert, he's probably just threatening to take on h2 and just have 3 extra pawns. and after that there can be trades. Doesn't really matter. Black will just have a big advantage. So white accepts it. The reason it works is now another seemingly crazy move. Hopefully you can figure it out or consider it. Queen to a3, leaving the queen en prise, which is like French for it can be taken, I guess. It's hanging. So the obvious thing is taking with the pawn doesn't work because the bishop can take, and that's checkmate. The king is restricted because of the rook, and the bishop just checks it. And obviously it's threatening checkmate by taking with the queen. So this is, I mean, that's a pretty good threat. That's why the rook was sacrificed. And that's why this queen being here and the rook being on an open file ended up working. Anyway, white plays c3. This seems pretty solid, or at least the best that white could play. Now it threatens to actually take the queen, because then the king, if the bishop takes, the king can run away. It protects this pawn with the queen. It really seems to solidify the pawns, but I guess white couldn't deal with every threat, so the queen can just take this pawn now. That's what happens when you long castle. The end pawn, until you get your king over, that end pawn can be quite weak. Okay, now, yeah, this is a threatening position. I'm trying to think what specifically is black threatening. Probably bishop to a3, because if it gets taken, I'm pretty sure that's checkmate. Or even taking with putting the queen there. What am I doing? So, yeah, anyway, white plays b4. Okay, this seems again like maybe the best option or reasonable option. Blocking off the bishop and the rook, they seem to be basically out of it now, and sort of threatening or offering to trade queens. So it seems like it's just the queen by itself now. Now black, I mean, if he plays check here, that's probably a bad idea, because white would be happy to trade queens. He's got a rook, sort of a rook ahead. Even if he's lost some pawns, he wants to trade queens. So black instead plays queen to a1 check to make the king move. Now he plays here. Black plays king to b2. I think he could move here or here. I think it's a similar result, but basically black wants to crash through. So for instance, if he went here, I think maybe black would take with the rook instead. I'm not sure, but anyway, black takes on b4. Again, white doesn't have to take, but here it's too dangerous. Black has a discovered check. You can move the bishop to the side. And there's just too many threats. So white takes, and now black takes with the rook, which is check. Now if white doesn't do anything, like if white moves the king, this would be checkmate, like check. That's checkmate actually straight away. Whoops. I'm okay with tactics. I'm not always that accurate. Wait, where was it? Here. If he goes there, then that's what's the easiest way? I guess check and then checkmate, because there's a pawn blocking that. So anyway, so white has no choice. He takes the rook with the queen, and that's kind of good. I'm usually pretty happy if I can get them to sacrifice the queen, but black did sacrifice a rook and a bishop, and now he's lost another rook. So in terms of material, black's got a queen and bishop. The bishop, I guess, equalizes, but then two rooks and a bishop versus the queen. Even though black has extra pawns, but that's tricky. If white can get his king over here, say, then the game, white may have the advantage. Possibly, I'm not 100% sure, but it could be a tricky game. So white's in check. Let me remember. I think he went here. I don't know if it matters a huge amount where he goes. Black's just going to try to keep creating threats. Like if he went here, black can probably just sort of check him until he's here. He is kind of vulnerable. Black is in a tricky position. Just checking with the queen's no good. White can eventually run away. He wants to bring this bishop in. The best way is to get it here, so Black just sort of sacrifices this pawn. Threatens the bishop. The bishop may as well take it, or else this is like another threat. Takes it. Okay, check. When you've got two things attacking diagonally, they complement each other really well. The black queen's covering these dark squares, and the bishop's covering these squares. The only place white can move is there, but then that would be... Oh, that's not checkmate. You go there. I haven't looked at it in detail. What would you do next? Possibly just... Is that checkmate? I think that's checkmate. Right, so... But anyway, so white blocks it with the rook. Blocking with the bishop, let's see. See if you can find the combination that works. Probably just queen there. Going there's no good because then white can take and wins a piece and keeps attacking. And if white goes the other way, black can take the bishop for free. And the rook could take the bishop then back. So anyway. So where were we? So white blocks with the rook, but now black can sort of do the same sort of thing. Brings the queen in here. If white moves away from the rook, again, black can just take it. And so white goes there, black goes check. Sort of skewering the bishop. If the king moves this way, black just takes it and keeps the pressure on. So, wait up, was that the position or was it here? Here. So then white moves away. Where was it? Now I'm getting confused. I think he goes there. But then black goes check. So, again, there's sort of a double threat. If white moves the king, black wins the rook. Otherwise, black is going to take the rook. So yeah, white resigned. Let me just go through the last moves. I've got to be confused. So white moves there, black goes there. I can't remember if white goes here or here. I don't think it really matters. Let's say there, check, and then the game's over. Even if white blocks the check with that, yeah, I think that's right. And then black can take. So, and I guess, yeah, just losing an extra piece and then having the queen and the bishop are still basically attacking. At the very least they can sort of pin down the pieces, and then black could just bring a pawn down. There's too much pressure, so the game's over. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that. I know it's a bit long. I don't fully understand that game, but it's kind of cool. Just there's little things you can learn, like that cool combination. You always want to keep an eye out for that. If you've got a rook on an open file and a queen ready to jump in, you know, these pawns can end up stuck and pinned, and you just want to end up with your pieces in good positions, like the bishop here. It's a strange opening. I don't think that's a typical opening, but alright, anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks, bye.